Hey there, friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again, and today I've got 10 tips for new players jumping into Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League for the very first time. These should help you navigate through Metropolis and beyond, so let me get right into it. First off, you're going to want to keep any legendary, infamous, or notorious items you find, even if you do snag them early on in the game. So, essentially, there's no gear score, item score, or any kind of power level in Suicide Squad, so everything that you find could be viable later on if it does fit your build. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have anything epic and below is basically useless once you do find a legendary option in that slot or higher, so you can feel free to break those down. But once you get to the end game, you're essentially only going to be using legendary, notorious, and infamous items, so very important to remember. Another big tip: practice your traversal on your character, not only to get around the map, to get from one mission to the other, but also in combat. I think that's something that people are already underrating just a little bit. Traversal is a vital part of your kit when it comes to the actual combat gameplay. So once you get that down on your favorite character, I highly recommend trying it out with your other characters that you're leveling up as well, and just get used to getting in and out of danger, going from one enemy to the next, because you can really move around a battlefield really fast if you use your traversal well. And that's something where it takes a little bit of time to get used to. It feels a little wonky at first, but once you get it down, it feels fantastic, and it's probably my favorite part of the game. Another thing to keep in mind when you're doing your various missions, pay attention to the modifiers. Some of the support squad missions and other missions that you see in the game have specific modifiers where you only can kill enemies with a certain type of damage, like with grenades or critical hit damage, and those missions can be frustrating if you head into them with the wrong equipment. So you definitely want to take a peek at every mission you are taking on to understand what the objective is, what you have to be doing, and also make sure you're also using a boosted character potentially for that mission as well, because certain characters will get increased rewards for certain missions as well. Next up, you're going to want to do your support squad missions as soon as possible, in my personal opinion. And the reason for that is you unlock new crafting options by doing them, but also if you're doing them through the campaign, you'll get additional experience, you'll get additional rewards as well. And I think that can be very, very helpful as you are progressing for a number of reasons. You might not want to craft right away in the game. You're going to save that until you have much better items, and I'm going to go into that in just a little bit, but you are going to want to have those options ready for once you do get to end game. You want all of your different unlocks for your support squad to be ready to go. As far as crafting, you're not going to want to craft much until the end game. Maybe you can unlock the trophies or the achievements if you'd like, but other than that, you're not going to want to spend a lot of resources on crafting until you're really focusing on your different builds. If you waste a lot of that early on, then you might not have those options available as you get into the end game, as you are really progressing with your builds and you're trying to upgrade them as much as possible, because there is a lot of different ways to upgrade your weapons and customize them to really fit the build that you're looking for. So that leads me into the next tip, which is to really pay attention to the weapon perks. Some of them are interesting in ways you might not expect. For example, a grenade that does 0 damage but pops enemies into the air. If you're trying to get grenade kills or you're focused on a grenade build, having that as an option might not be for you. However, if you have a build that focuses on defeating airborne enemies, now all of a sudden that grenade will slot in perfectly. So pay close attention to all your different weapon perks, because I honestly threw on a shotgun early on that only did damage when it was critting, and I wasn't critting often enough, so it felt like I wasn't doing any damage. And then when I kind of spec'd into more of a crit based build, it did way more damage and felt way more fun. So your joy with the various weapons might be impacted by the modifier that you're not really paying enough attention to. Another option that I would say for a lot of people is to not be afraid to swap characters on the fly. So while you're in combat, you can't change characters, but when you are between missions, when you're going into different options, don't be afraid to change up your characters. I've found that having a character like Deadshot helps me out tremendously with a sniper rifle when I am doing critical hit specific missions, for example. Or if I am doing a mission that really focuses on grenades, having Harley Quinn can be very nice. So that's why I really like to swap out the characters, even though I do have a main in King Shark, but having those other characters as options is very nice depending on what you're doing. And as you move into endgame, once you link up with a party and start grinding for different activities and trying to get better rewards and builds and everything, you might find that a certain character will be more helpful for some of those missions depending on what your other teammates are bringing as well. That leads me to the social squad, something that everyone should be using, in my opinion, because it is helpful not only for the player who is using the social squad character, but also the person whose character it is. So if you didn't know, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League essentially has a pawn system from Dragon's Dogma 2 where you can invite a character that is built from another player. So you can have their weapons and gear on that character, all their builds and modifiers and everything like that. And so they might have a really cracked Harley Quinn that you bring with you, which will help out make the game a little bit easier for you, where you don't have to play multiplayer necessarily. But also, if you use somebody else's character, they will get rewarded, and if somebody uses your character, you will get rewarded. So I think this is a feature that everybody should be trying out at the very least and seeing if it's effective for you in your gameplay. So I definitely recommend checking out the Social Squad. Another thing to keep in mind, this is specifically a tip for the boss battles when you're facing Flash, Superman specifically, and even Brainiac at the end. You're going to want precision or ranged weapons in at least one of your two slots, in my opinion. And this is because you're going to want to counter those bosses fairly often, and having ranged weapons makes it just much easier to whittle them down from a distance as they're throwing tornadoes at you, as they're introducing the elements. There's all kinds of attacks that these different bosses have, and having a precision like a handgun, you can have a sniper rifle, even ARs if you're running King Shark would be a better option than something like a minigun or a shotgun, at least the initial time that you're playing through it. Once you get a better build, once you are maxed out with your character, that will definitely change. So it's just something to remember, and I think it would make it a lot easier because there's little more frustrating in Suicide Squad than jumping into a mission and having the wrong equipment for the job. And then finally, you're going to want to pay attention to revives. This is in boss fights specifically, but also in other missions as well. If you have several revives remaining, normally you only get 3 when you are playing solo, then you can actually be a little bit more aggressive if you almost have the boss defeated. But if you're on your last life, you're going to want to be extra careful so you don't have to restart the entire boss battle, the entire mission, or anything like that. And I think that's something that a lot of people might miss as they're playing because they don't really realize there are a limited number of revives when you are taking on some of these different challenges. So those are the 10 tips that I brought for you today. I'm going to have a lot more. I know Suicide Squad is a looter shooter, which I'm very familiar with, but a lot of people might not be. So if there's any things that you want to know about, any builds that you're looking forward to, any kind of tips or tricks that you would want me to put in another video, let me know in the comments down below. My name is JoPa. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Definitely, if you want to stay tuned for more Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League content going forward. Have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.